Hey everybody, this is Russ from Retro Gamecore. So the new Kindle Fire HD10 just came out, and this is a tablet sold by Amazon at a budget price. They have a 3GB RAM model that costs $150, and a 4GB Plus model that comes in at $180. And compared to something like an iPad Pro, those are pretty insane prices. And so I decided to pick up one of these Plus models to see how it performs as like a retro gaming tablet. Because I think at this price, sub $200, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. Amazon really undercuts the price of their tablets because they assume you're going to buy a bunch of content using that tablet. And so I'm interested in stretching that value the extra mile to see what kind of gaming performance we can get for under $200. So despite being considered a budget tablet, it has some pretty impressive specs. It has an octa-core CPU running at 2 GHz, a solid 5 GHz Wi-Fi, and a hefty 6500 mAh battery. And the 10-inch display has a fairly high resolution, better than 1080p. It has wireless charging, 2 different sizes of internal storage, as well as a microSD slot, stereo speakers, and a headphone jack. So to me, this is kind of hitting that Goldilocks space, where it carries a lot of value and there's no undercutting when it comes to any of the features. So without any further delay, let's investigate how the Kindle Fire HD10 Plus performs as a dedicated gaming device. So here's the unboxing here. I went with a 32GB model because I knew I was going to be using a microSD card for most of my storage anyway. And one of the main benefits of buying a tablet like this, especially from someone like Amazon, is it has very fast shipping, and you're covered by Amazon's return policy in case you don't like it or maybe there's something wrong with it. The tablet comes with some quick instructions, a USB-C cable, as well as a 9-watt fast charging plug. Now the non-Plus version actually comes in 4 different colors, but if you opt for the Plus model like I did, you're only going to get this one slate color. The back of the device has a nice rubberized and grippy texture to it. I really like it. And it feels solid. It feels like it already has a case on it, and it's going to withstand a couple drops. So all the buttons are on one side. You have your volume buttons, your sleep button, 2 microphone holes, a USB-C input, as well as a headphone jack. It comes with both rear and front cameras, and when you're holding it in a horizontal orientation, the speakers actually fire up, which is really handy. So booting up the device here, it actually has its own operating system here, which is tailored to the Kindle Fire, but it's actually just like a version of Android 9. And it doesn't give you full access to Android. For example, you don't have the Google Play Store, instead you have like this Amazon store. And the amount of apps and everything they offer is very limited. And it makes sense because this device is considered to be like a consumer device. It's all about consuming content. And if you wanted, you could just go ahead and sideload your own apps just directly onto the tablet. But it's actually pretty easy to load the Google Play Store in here and run regular apps. So let me show you how to do that real quick. So the first thing you want to do is go into Settings, then go into Device Options, and then near the bottom you'll see a category that says About Fire Tablet. Click on that, and then click on the serial number about 6 times. And that will unlock Developer Mode on the tablet. Okay, once that's done, go back one menu, and then select Developer Options. And then turn on the Developer Options, and then just confirm that you want to do that. And then turn on USB debugging, and then just press OK. And you're actually done. This is all you need to do on the tablet itself. Okay, before we get any further, I should caveat that this only works on Windows computers because the app that we're going to use to unlock everything is only available on Windows PCs. So if you're a Mac user, you're going to have to sideload your own apps, which is pretty easy. You just go online, search for the APK, and then install it onto your device. Now the app we're going to use is called Fire Toolbox. And I'll have a link to this in my written guide, which you can find in the video description. But basically, you just want to go to this site, scroll all the way down, until you find the download section. So just click on one of these links to download the installer file. Once you have the file here, just go ahead and extract it. And then open up the Fire Toolbox exe file. Now this app unfortunately is just full of pop-ups, so you're going to have to hit OK all the time on this. It's kind of annoying. But once you get through these first couple screens, it's going to ask you to update. I would go ahead and download and install that update. Now when the update is done with its installation, it's going to reboot into Fire Toolbox. I got an error here that said it couldn't find Fire Toolbox. It's fine, just go ahead and hit OK, and then restart the Fire Toolbox exe file. And again, you're just going to have to deal with a bunch of pop-ups. It's all good. Once it says no device is detected, go ahead and plug in your device into the computer. On the tablet, it's going to ask you if you want to enable USB debugging. Just go ahead and hit yes. And once it's connected, you'll see this main menu here. It's going to ask you if you ever used it before. I would just go ahead and hit yes, and then yet another pop-up. Okay, so the main things I want to show off here are adding Google services. This is going to install the Google Play Store here. That's on the top right. And once it's done installing, it's going to warn you to wait about 10 minutes before you actually log in. So let's do some other stuff while we're waiting. So the next one is the custom launcher, and this is going to change the layout of your device itself. Now I saw earlier that ETA Prime did this exact same thing on one of his videos, and he used the Nova launcher, and it looked pretty sweet, so we're going to use that one too. You can add widgets if you want, I'm not going to do that. Okay, once that's done, let's check out a couple more. The next section is called Lock Screen Management. And I just want to caveat here real quick that you have the option right here to remove the lock screen ads, as well as disabling the lock screen altogether. But the thing is, this is a little bit shady. If you think about it, Amazon charges you a little bit less in order to show those ads. And by removing these ads, you're actually breaking that contract that you've made with Amazon when you first bought the device. So it's really going to be up to you. Are you going to be able to sleep at night if you remove these ads? Then go for it. Now, if you're worried about Amazon maybe coming to your house and taking your birthday away because you removed ads on their tablet, then just don't do it. All good either way. Okay, and the last option I want to show you real quick is called Manage Amazon Apps. And this will allow you to disable specific Amazon apps on your device. So all those random like Alexa and Kindle apps and stuff that are on your device, you can just disable them here. Personally, I use the standard debloat option, which is the recommended option. And if you don't want to do something like this, you can also do a manual disable and pick your specific apps that you want to remove. Now after you run this tool, it'll give you a pop-up and say, hey, you need to make sure that you don't have over-the-air updates on your Amazon Kindle. And that's it. That's all the tweaking that needs to happen in order for you to have a full-on Android tablet. So when you get back to your tablet, it's going to ask you to change your different themes as well as what your drawer style is. And they're not talking about underwear here, they're talking about your home screen. But after that, here you go. You have a very basic Android tablet. Now the first thing I wanted to test is whether or not the device had HDMI out, because I think it would be really cool to have it function as its own gaming console. So I hooked in this USB-C to HDMI adapter, and then I plugged the HDMI into my monitor, and sure enough, it doesn't work at all. And I checked later as well, this device just does not have HDMI out capability, unfortunately. But it's all good, let's see what we can do on the tablet itself. So I'm not going to get into too much detail about setting up your device, because it's the same as it is with any other Android device. Just go into the Google Play Store, get your apps, and install them onto the tablet. Now one of the things I do want to show off is this app here called the ATV Launcher, or you can buy the ATV Launcher Pro. And this is kind of suited for Android TV apps, but it works really well with tablets as well. It's a second launcher that you can use to organize your apps in this really easy to touch interface. So in here you can go ahead and move all your apps around so you can arrange them in a specific order for you. And you can even go into the launcher settings and select your hidden apps. So you can take out all the apps you just don't want to see while using ATV Launcher Pro. So theoretically, you could have this tablet perform as a regular old tablet. For example, you could put Netflix on here, Disney Plus, all those things that you want the family and the kids to be able to enjoy. And you could go ahead and hide all of your gaming apps in a specific folder or something like that, so they wouldn't even see it. It would just work as a family tablet. But also you could use the ATV Launcher Pro app to just show the gaming related things. So it basically creates two tablets in one. You have your regular tablet, which has all your Netflix and family stuff, and then you select the ATV Launcher Pro, and all of a sudden you have a gaming tablet. For $180, it's pretty cool because you get to use it still as a tablet, but then you can also use it as a gaming device. Now, if you're going to throw games on it, I would recommend you use an SD card. I'm just going to use a 128 gig model here from SanDisk. So it's super simple. All you have to do is pop the micro SD card into the tablet, and then it's going to ask you how to use your storage device. Personally, I used it as tablet storage, which basically just expands the micro SD card as an extension of the tablet's storage space. So to access all the storage, you just swipe down once you've plugged it into your computer, and then under USB Preferences, change it to File Transfer. Over on your computer, it's going to pop up as an accessible drive. And from here, all you have to do is just go into it, and then you can add what you want. For example, if you start up RetroArch and close it out, it's going to make its own RetroArch folder. And within here, in the Systems folder, you can add all your BIOS files. And just like that, you've added all your necessary BIOS files to play RetroArch on this device. You could also make your own folder called Games, and within here you can move over all your game files. So I'm just going to take like my best of collection and I'm going to move them all over to my device. And the transfer speeds aren't super fast, but really you only have to do this one time. Okay, so when it comes to playing games on your device, you have a few different options when it comes to controllers. First, you could use just a plain old Bluetooth controller like this one here, or you could use something that has a 2.4 GHz USB dongle like this one, or you could just use a straight up USB controller like this one here. Let's start with the USB controller first. So this is the PlayStation Classic controller that actually comes with the PlayStation Classic when you buy it. And you literally just plug it in and you have a USB-C to USB-A adapter, and it works just great. There's no discernible lag and you don't have to worry about batteries or anything. Next up is this one here, which is the Big One Elitist S. Now this one has Bluetooth, but it also uses a 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi dongle. This one also is super responsive, and it's very easy to connect because you don't have to do any Bluetooth pairing. Finally, we have this 8BitDo SN30 Pro. Now this one is a Bluetooth controller, and it probably has a little bit more lag than the other two controllers, but honestly this one felt great too. I couldn't detect any sort of lag on this. And the nice thing about this is you don't have to worry about any sort of plugs or dongles or anything else like that. So for the majority of my testing, I actually use this controller. Okay, let's get into actual gameplay now. So as you probably suspected, Nintendo games are going to play just fine. The screen is very rich and vibrant, everything looks just so nice. Same thing with Super Nintendo, and because this is a high resolution display, you can turn on integer scaling to have perfect pixelation without having to really sacrifice any of the screen size. In any of those Super Nintendo games like Final Fantasy III, which could usually give you problems when it comes to emulation, they play just fine on this. This thing is way overpowered when it comes to Super Nintendo, Genesis, any of these 16-bit systems. And of course, you can play any handheld system no problem as well. Game Boy is going to run flawlessly. You can even change the colorization options here to kind of really suit your mood. And things like Game Boy Advance are going to look just beautiful on this. The 3:2 aspect ratio of Game Boy Advance really shines on this display. Now PS1 was the first time that I ran into any hiccups. If you run the PCSX rearmed core on RetroArch, it runs just fine, but it only plays at 1x resolution. There are no additional resolution upscaling options in this core on Android. Now if we try something else, like for example the Beetle PSX hardware core, this one has rendering issues. For example, it does not detect the hardware rendering in it. And so in addition to not being able to upscale the image, it actually doesn't play at full speed even with 1x resolution. And there might be some tweaks in the system that you could do to fix that, but I couldn't find them myself. And same thing with the third PS1 core, which is the Swan Station core. This one did allow me to upscale, but when I upscaled, the image was completely slow. We're looking at about 12 frames per second, completely unplayable. Now if you switch the backend over to Vulkan, the performance is much better, but as you can see here, it looks terrible. Even when playing this core at 1x resolution, it didn't run at full speed. So I would say, unless you really want to do some digging here, you're going to be stuck at 1x resolution using the PCSX rearmed core. Sega Saturn was another one that experienced slowdown when I was playing it in RetroArch. Now there's a standalone version of the Saturn emulator on the Android store, but I had issues with it recognizing my file system, so I wasn't able to boot those games. But it's probably possible if you really want to get into it. But that's really going to be RetroArch in a nutshell here. It can play all of the older systems flawlessly, but once you start pushing the limits, you're going to see some performance issues. But luckily a lot of those more advanced systems have standalone emulators, so let's check those out. Now I spent a lot of time testing PSP. One is because these games just look so beautiful on this 10-inch screen, but performance is really good on this standalone PSP emulator as well. As you can see here, Ridge Racer ran at a 3x scaling with only very occasional dips in frame rate, which can be easily compensated with using the auto frame skip of 1. But if you look at the top right, you can see it barely ever dips below 60 frames per second. And I would say about 75% of games perform like this, where you can use a 3x scaling and then an auto frame skip of 1, and performance is going to be just about flawless. And with a 3x scaling like this, it looks very crisp on this 10-inch display. In general, this is probably one of my most enjoyable experiences playing PSP games ever. Now some games definitely have slowdown. For example, Outrun 2006 has some pretty hefty slowdown when it comes to 3x scaling, even with an auto frame skip of 1. But if you drop that down to 2x scaling, it runs just fine. So it's really going to be a balance between the resolution that you'd like to see on your tablet and the performance that you can live with. So my cat Chicken just jumped on my lap. It's probably because I'm saying the word PSP so often, she thought I was calling her. But when she realized I didn't have any treats or anything for her, she got immediately off my lap. So cat break is over, let's move over to Wipeout Pulse. Performance on this is a lot like Outrun 2006. It doesn't play at full speed when you're using 3x resolution, but if you drop it down to 2x resolution, it plays just fine. And even at 2x resolution, these games look very nice. The Grand Theft Auto games also have the same issue where they probably work best at 2x resolution. And unfortunately, the God of War games even have slowdown when you're using 2x scaling. Now the God of War games work out perfectly well when you're using a 1x scaling, but as you can see the resolution is very pixelated, so it's going to be up to you whether or not you consider this playable. Okay, moving on to Nintendo 64 here. Now this one plays flawlessly even when you upscale it to 1080p. As you can see on the top left here, it's holding at a steady frame rate. And this was the same across any game that I tried. For example, you can see here F-Zero is running at about 59-60 frames per second even at 1080p. Even something like Mario Tennis, which always has some graphical issues when it comes to this emulator in particular, is still running at full speed. It's really great. This is probably an excellent Nintendo 64 tablet. Okay, keeping on the subject of Nintendo, let's try out Gamecube on the Dolphin emulator. And unfortunately, as you can see here, performance is not great. Even when playing some of the easier games to play, like Mario Kart Double Dash, I still experienced quite a bit of slowdown. And then games like F-Zero GX, which are pretty demanding, are just completely unplayable. And it doesn't matter if you use the OpenGL backend or the Vulkan backend, both of them have performance issues. So in general, I wouldn't consider this a GameCube tablet. You might be able to try some of those other versions of Dolphin that are floating around on GitHub to see if you get better performance, but in general, I don't think this tablet can really handle it. Okay, moving over to Dreamcast with the Redream emulator, everything's running beautifully. I kept it upscaled to 1280 by 960, and as you can see here, it's getting a very solid 60 frames per second. And this happened across any game that I tried here on the Dreamcast. So when it comes to emulation on some of these harder to play systems, I would say that Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast play just perfectly right out of the box. PSP takes a little bit of tweaking, but it's still really good, and I would use RetroArch for all the PS1 and below games, which play just fine on this device. Okay, moving over to Android games here. We'll start with Horizon Chase, one of my favorite games to test with. And controls are perfect with this, graphics are beautiful, it's just a really nice experience. Same thing with some of the heavier duty games like Asphalt 8. Frame rate seems to be really solid here, and these games are just beautiful because they've been optimized for these larger screens. So let's jump over to game streaming now. Let's start by talking about this app here called Parsec. Typically I like to show off things like Steam Link and Moonlight and AMD Link, but Parsec is a really nice alternative as well. To get this app to work, all you have to do is sign up for a free account, and then install the app on your computer as well as on your tablet. And it works on both Mac and PC. And just like that, you can control your computer using the tablet. And it works really good for emulation. For example, here you can see I'm using the Wii U emulator here on my computer and streaming it onto the tablet. And the latency is super low, you can adjust the graphic fidelity as much as you'd like. And it has a built-in keyboard, as well as you can use your finger as the mouse. So overall, you're not tethered to your PC at all. You can just do this from across the house, without having to worry about getting over to your computer to use a mouse click or anything else like that. And then all of a sudden, the games that are harder to emulate, things like Wii U or GameCube or PS2, anything else like that, is really just going to be dependent on the performance of your PC itself. Even games which are almost impossible to emulate, things like Star Wars Rogue Leader, run just fine. All in all, if you have a PC that can handle these games, and you want to play some of these classic systems on your tablet, say on the couch or something else like that, this is a really good option because you don't have to worry about the emulation performance. Even here, running PSP on my computer, I can stream it at 5x resolution onto the tablet. And all of a sudden I have flawless Outrun 2006 gameplay, and that's a pretty cool concept to me. Now you could also stream directly from your consoles. For example, you have PS4 Remote Play, but there's some caveats with this. For example, it doesn't support the PS4 controller, so you have to use your fingers. And there's a third-party app called Chiaki, which allows you to use any controller you want, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get it working on this tablet. So your mileage may vary on this one in particular if you're trying to play PS4 remotely. But Remote Play on the Xbox One actually works really well. For example, you can see here I'm streaming the game directly onto the tablet, and there's a little bit of hiccups and lags here, but when you're actually playing it on screen, it's very nice. And finally, another app that is supported on this is the Stadia app, so you could play Google Stadia games directly on this tablet. And a few years ago, I was really into the first Destiny game, and I always wanted to play that game on a tablet somewhere. And now with Stadia and everything else, this is actually a possibility. And it's kind of crazy to be able to play such a big epic game like this without any sort of installation or loading or anything else like that. You can just jump into it directly. Okay, so wrapping things up here, what do I really think about using this tablet as a gaming device? And I would say that really depends on what kind of style of gaming you want to do. If you really want to have that retro handheld experience, something like all of the different devices that I typically show on this channel, this might not be a good fit for you. Because in general, you probably don't want to lug around a tablet as well as a controller and prop it up on your knees or whatever you're going to do while you're playing. But if you or someone else in your family is in the market for a new tablet, like an easy way to watch Netflix or things like that, for $150 to $180, there's a lot of value in this Fire tablet just from that perspective. The beautiful screen, the long battery life, things like that. It'd be great for like a plane ride or a long distance road trip. But all the same, it's actually a very impressive gaming machine as well. Not only can it play things like Dreamcast and Nintendo 64 and PSP, but it can upscale it and also take advantage of this beautiful display. And the little kid in me is just amazed by where technology has taken us. Here I am walking around with this portable little TV that weighs less than a pound, but can also play all of the games of my childhood no problem. And for the price of $150 to $180, which is basically the cost of like 3 brand new PS4 games, you can have a lifetime of games to play on this device. So is this thing worth it for $180? I would say as a dedicated gaming device, that's really going to be up to you. When you compare it to something like the RJ350M, which cost $140, you're definitely getting way more value and screen and everything else with this device. But if I had to decide between this and a dedicated retro handheld system, I'd be a little bit torn, because I really do like the idea of having the screen and the controller in one cohesive piece. So like with all of my reviews, I don't have any sort of definitive answer for you. If this is something you're interested in, you want to get a tablet, this might be a good choice. But if the idea of trying to use a tablet as a retro gaming device is a little bit off-putting to you, you might not be happy with this device. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a viable option for under $200? I'm really interested to hear what you say because I personally am torn about it as well. So that's it for this video. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, and be sure to like and subscribe if you found this helpful. And we will see you next time. Happy gaming.